In the game Secret Hitler, it is gonna get quite argumentative and very emotional. The thing is, the game is a social deduction game, and you don't have a lot of information. However, you can use maths and logic to get the best scenario, the best answer out of the given scenario that you're in. However, I want to just talk about, I guess, not really like emotions versus logic, but a lot of players, especially new players, get very defensive and very emotional over stuff that's absolutely pointless. The biggest pointless one is if someone says, "Oh, if you're what playing as white or whatever, oh, I think green is a fascist," right? One, that is a stupid comment to make as uh, white, because that's based on what logic are you basing that on? And when you ask that to that person, they go, "Oh, I have a feeling." That is absolutely terrible, and all you've done there is made most likely this guy again is probably in the same boat as you, very emotional at in the same boat. He goes, "Well, you've called me fascist. I don't like that." Gets on the defensive. Well, that means white, you're fascist. Now you've got two people here being very emotional, with absolutely zero logic, and they're actually on the same team, but they don't know it. And then what you've done there is, if all you've done is allow the fascists to be quiet, let you two argue, silently play out stuff, and screw the board over more. Now, if you're to shut any kind of like emotional play down, just use logic. Like I said, I mean that's kind of a forehead take. Just use logic forehead, but like it's 20. Like for example, on the first play, it's 24% chance likely that is a triple fash. You want to just play or statistically likely, like we said before. Uh, Inspector, if there's no conflict on the board, they're most likely fascist. In a conflict, it's a 50-50. Um, Depending on card draws, you should know what's going on. You know before reshuffle there's 4 or 5 plays. I think maybe with experience and I guess and depending on your personality, for me at least, it's not difficult to play logically. But you need to make sure you're at least aware of emotional stuff that's going on. That's probably the best one. Um, Another one that people get very emotional over is that if I point out the fact that it's 24% likely to get a triple F on the first turn and they're actually liberal, they automatically assume that like they need to sort of redeem themselves, or like I don't know, prove them. It's weird. It's like prove themselves. No one is guaranteed a fash in that scenario. Like it's not guaranteed. It's just more likely. Every time you present it, you should present it as this guy's probably fash. Another big one I see people do is that they always talk from their perspective, but never outline that it's their perspective. They'll go like, "Oh, I'm liberal," um, and then based on that, hey, this person should be fashion, this that, but no one knows that you're liberal, so there's no point talking about your perspective. Always, for me personally, if you wanna do this properly, speak from a board perspective, right? You know that you're liberal, let's say, but I always point out that hey, I got a triple F, so did this person. This person was also forced. That means that white, purple, and yellow are looking kind of sus. I always out myself like that, and then people get weird. They're like, "Oh, why you just called yourself fascist?" I was like, "Yeah, I could be fascist from a board perspective." That's not very difficult to understand. And then people think you're playing some weird oh, well, he's trying to gain trust or control the board or something like that. It's not really. The only reason I have to point this stuff out is because some people just don't know or don't think like that, so I have to point it out. If in a really experienced lobby, half the time I probably wouldn't even be talking because everyone understands what's going on. So um, that's another thing. Also, if there's a conflict on the board, they literally will do this. They'll go like, "Oh, blue's fascist, don't trust him," or "Oh, white's fascist, don't do this, don't do that." Like everyone on the board shouldn't care. We don't care what you've got to say because you're in a 50-50. You can't prove anything. There's no way of you proving that the other person's fash or not. We need more information. You're probably not seeing play. So the best thing you can do is focus on voting correctly, suggesting probably the best plays on the board, and really steering away from the whole like he's fash, no, he's fash, no, I'm lib, no, I'm lib. It's just pointless. You're going nowhere. It's just an emotional battle that's absolutely pointless, and it's done nothing for the table apart from waste time and let fascists do stuff under the board, or like let fascists sit back and not say anything. So I would steer clear of a lot of emotional play. Uh, I mean, I don't really know too much about, um, I guess, emotion versus logical, if it's like personality driven or something like that. So maybe it's just maybe inherent in some people. So maybe some people might need to just like uh, think like, is this actually worth talking about? The best advice I could probably give is this speaking from a board perspective? If it's no, probably don't say it, or at least say from my perspective, I think, or at least say, um, I believe. I don't know. There's things like that. It's better than being like I said in the other examples, like, oh, he's fash. Why? I just have a feeling. Like that has literally has not helped anyone, and I see it so many times, but it's literally nothing. Um, Also, another thing I would say is if you don't understand, I see it all the time. I don't know. For me, it's not a very difficult concept. If I don't know something, I ask why. I don't sit there and sit in my double down on my I guess what I wouldn't really want to call it belief, but like on what I believe to be true. I don't double down on it. I would argue my point. It seems I've come across a lot of people that don't like it when I argue my point, I guess. If I believe something to be correct, one, I can listen to you and see what you're saying, and two, I can quite easily argue my own points. So what I would say is, if you don't understand something, you need to ask why. Now, a lot of times I feel like what the people do is let's say I'm the one talking because I talk from quite a logical and board perspective, so I'll generally control the quote unquote control the board, even though I'm just pointing out the logical plays. What I would say is you ask why. Now if I tell you why and you don't like the why, and you think there's an actual, I guess, logical or and that what I'm saying is wrong, that you can obviously point that out. But just because I give or someone on the board gives a logical or a board perspective play does not mean they're running the board like it's some kind of like five-head fascist. Um, I don't really know how to explain that more. It's kind of just use your brain, forehead type thing. Like just use your head. If what they're saying makes sense, they could be tricking you if you don't know extra information. That's also true. Um, for me personally, I still talk from a board perspective. I mean, I can actually kind of do both. You can still be a fascist and talk board perspective, and just miss out certain key things that they don't know. But generally, it's not really controlling. At least in my point of view, I'm not controlling the board. It's just giving the most logical plays that make sense if you understand the game.